Right, hi everyone. My name's Ashley Marsh and I am a lecturer at the University of West London, but I also work for the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts, teaching food education in predominantly primary schools, secondary schools and obviously children's hospitals. And today's session is going to be all about taste and the senses. And it's basically getting you to learn what you're putting in your bodies, learn a little bit more about food, because essentially food is essential for our growing, especially as young people like you. All right, okay, so we're going to start off. I'm going to ask you to tell me the 5 tastes. It's all about the 5s here. We've got 5 tastes, the 5 senses and the 5 food groups. So who's going to start me off with 1? Right, so number 1, say we could go sweet. All right, number 2, maybe we can go bitter. Number 3, if you're swimming in the sea and you've got your mouth open, yep, salty. And then we've got sour. And does anyone know the 5th taste? All right, it's a combination of these 4. All right, it's not very well known, okay? And it's umami. All right, okay? It's not the big wave, that's the tsunami. All right, so remember umami, and it's a combination of sweet, bitter, salty, sour, all together produces umami. So things like, who here likes Marmite? Some people do, some people don't. So that's an umami taste. Things like soya sauce, mushrooms reduced down, umami taste. Now, senses. So we've just been talking about 1, haven't we? Taste. Any others? So we've got sight. We've got touch. We've got smell. And we've got hearing. All right, okay, so now food groups. Now, if you look at my plate here, if you can see that, we've got some food groups on there already, haven't we? So we've got bread there. What food group would bread be? Yep, that's right, carbohydrates. So carbs, carbohydrates. We've got tomato on there. Now, is tomato a fruit or a vegetable? Yep, it's a fruit. So fruit and veg. Okay, how many fruit and veg should we have a day? That's right, 5 or more. Okay, so also then we've got fats and oils. We've got protein. And we've got dairy. Now, question for you. Do all foods... Can you see that? Yeah. Do all foods this way? Yeah. So do all foods just come under one category? So if I was to say tuna, big old tuna, what would that come under? It comes under protein, but there's something else it comes under that we can't produce ourselves. Makes our hair nice and shiny, makes our skin nice and smooth. When you get to my age, it helps your bones as well. Yes, so it's omega oils. All right, okay, so it comes under fats as well. So it's interesting that not all foods just come under one category. All right, now, there's one more thing on there that we need to help us to digest these, okay? Helps our vital organs, helps us to listen to our teachers so we can concentrate. We should be having water bottles, all right? It keeps us hydrated. And yes, it's the water. So we need water, don't we? The old council juice, okay? So water, keep ourselves hydrated. That's why at school, if you're running around, okay, you should have a water bottle with you so you can keep yourself nice and hydrated. All right, well done. Okay, so that's there, we've got there. Now, we're going to use all these tastes now, and we're going to use all these senses. All right, so what I'd like you to do, you should all have a plate like this in front of you. I'd like you to have a look at the bread. Just have a look at it. What do you see? We can see, I think, that it's a baguette, can't we? We can see that it's brown on the edges, so we might think it's a bit crusty. What about the texture? The middle, is it smooth? No, there's holes there, isn't there? Now, what produces those holes? What produces those holes? Who's made bread here before? Right, okay. So we know for a fact that it's only got really 3 or 4 ingredients, hasn't it? So we've got flour, we've got salt, we've got water, we've got a little bit of sugar, and we've got something called yeast. All right, for those of you who have made bread before, you'll know that the yeast is essential. I'm sure through lockdown we were all doing sourdough and everything else, okay, making starters, right? But yeast is a microorganism, okay? It's a living being, a little bit like us, and if it's too cold, it doesn't work. If it's too hot, it's got a tendency to not work, or it can die. All right, we need to feed it, so that's why we put sugar into our bread, okay? And it has to be our sort of blood temperature, which is 36.5 or 37 degrees. And that's what creates those bubbles. Now, what do you think? So when it proves, we leave it to prove or rise, okay? And it creates a gas. Now, what gas do you think that is? It's a gas that we breathe out. We do breathe out some oxygen, but predominantly we breathe out carbon dioxide, okay? So it produces carbon dioxide, which creates those bubbles, all right, okay? And the gluten in the bread helps it to stabilise. So what happens, we put it into the oven, it rises, okay? It gets really hot, and then it dies. The yeast, it's done its job, and it gives us that lovely sort of squeeze. So pick your bread up now, okay, and give it a squeeze, so we can see it's nice and spongy, isn't it? Okay. If we didn't have the yeast in there, it would be very solid and very doughy, and it wouldn't have risen. All right. Okay. You can imagine dipping that into some soup and eating that. Okay. It's going to absorb all that liquid. It's lovely, isn't it? Okay. So now give it a smell. Give it a smell. You should be able to smell. If you remember what I said was in there. Okay. So we've got salt in there, so there's a little bit of saltiness there. We've got some sort of vinegar or sour sort of smell from the yeast as well. Now put it up against your ear and give it a scratch. So we're talking about texture now as well. We can feel the texture, we can hear the texture. Okay, it's quite crusty on the outside. Okay, it's quite soft in the middle. It's quite crumbly as well. It's going everywhere actually. All right, so it's quite crumbly as well. Now give it a taste. So there's a bit of sweetness there. I can get that texture again as well. It's quite crunchy, quite crispy, quite crusty, spongy and soft as well. All right, I can taste some saltiness. So we've used all our senses there, haven't we? We've just tasted it. We've used our sight to have a look at it. We've touched it. We've touched the texture. How crispy it was, how spongy it was. We've smelt it. Smelt a little bit salty. Some people would say it smells of bread. There's nothing better than smelling freshly baked bread in the morning or whenever. And we've listened to it as well, that texture, that crunchiness. Okay, so we can put that aside for a second. Now, we've got some items on this plate. Some of them you may have seen before, some of them you may have not. Okay. Now, if you haven't tried some of this stuff, it's great that you're about to try it, okay? I'm not saying you're gonna like it totally, all right, okay? But we'll discuss that when you come to it, all right, okay? Right, so lemon. Okay, very high in, all citrus fruits are very high in vitamin C, which is great if you've got a cold. All right, so give it a smell. Really fresh, fragrant smell. And now you can just put your, rub your finger on it, or you can bite it. This is where you get the facials. Oh, it's really quite sharp. Can take your breath away, as it just has me. So what taste do we think that is? That's right, it's quite sour, isn't it? Right, it is quite sour. Do lemons, do they grow above the ground or below the ground? They grow above the ground, they grow on trees. Okay? very nice, very soury. All right, okay. So we've got something else here that some of you may not have seen before. All right, so that's our sour taste. We've got the radish. Okay, now do radishes grow above the ground or below the ground? Give it a smell. It smells quite earthy. Okay, so it does, they grow below the ground. Now, can we eat the leaves? So you normally buy these in bunches. Right, you can eat the leaves. You need to wash them quite rigorously because it grows really near the ground. You get a lot of sand in there, so wash them 2 or 3 times, but they've got a lovely peppery taste, similar to rocket, all right? In this day and age, we don't really waste in an awful lot. You can keep them and put them in salads, all right? So, right, let's give this a taste. And as you can see you see that? I think you can see that. It's got a white, lovely white centre on a red outside. Okay, so that's, what taste do you think that is? It's quite peppery, okay, and it sort of zings your tongue, but it's a bitter taste, okay. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be walking around the streets eating bags of radishes, all right, okay, but these are great complement or to go with other things in salads. You've just tasted it, so it's got a texture, it's got a crunch to it, which is always great for salads. It's got great colour, and it's got a bitter taste that will go very well with other things. All right, so well done for tasting that, guys. Now, we come to this little thing. This is quite close to my heart because I was brought up, my grandparents had a restaurant in Norfolk, and this used to grow along the seaside, okay, the mud flats. So this is giving you a little bit of a clue what the taste is going to be. If you go across the Norfolk coastal roads, they'll sell this by outside their houses, all right, okay, and this is called Samphire. Or the second name, it looks a little bit like asparagus, so they call it sea asparagus, all right? Give it a smell. It hasn't really got a very pungent smell, but now give it a taste. And yes, it's got that saltiness, okay? It's lovely steamed, it's beautiful with fish. Okay, you can just saute it off with a little bit of butter, unsalted butter, of course, because it's really, really quite salty. And if you've got some left over, you can use this to season other dishes, all right, okay, rather than using salt. So as I said, this grows, and you can pick it. I mean, we've got it in, like I said, in Norfolk, you've got it along in Malden and Mersey Island, all the way around there, okay? So, and great, if you've never tried that before, it's fantastic that you've tried it, okay? It is quite salty, isn't it? Yeah. So, right, we come on to this. Now, this is a baby plum tomato on the vine, okay? Give that a smell, wow. Oh yes, it's got that summery smell, sort of greenhouse smell, okay? And now give it a taste. Oh yeah, okay. So, we're tasting that. Can you taste, it's sweet, isn't it? Yeah, it's got that saltiness as well. There's a little bit of sourness, and there's some bitterness there as well. So as I was saying to you earlier, about probably the taste that you didn't know that you existed, right? The umami taste. It's got the sweetness, it's got the bitterness, it's got the saltiness, it's got the sour. So it's an umami taste. All right, that tomato is an umami taste. Okay, it's lovely and juicy as well. All right, so there's our 4 tastes that we've come to. All right, now I've got this here. Now, who here or who there, okay, suffers from asthma or hay fever? Some of you, or you surely should know somebody that suffers from it. It's quite a regular thing. I do suffer from a little bit of minor asthma. Okay, now a little bit of homework for you. Your local honey is very, very good for your breathing or your respiratory system, which asthma and hay fever do affect. Okay, so I'm not talking about local honey from Marks and Spencer's or Waitrose, or there are other leading brands of shops. Okay, I want you to find out where your local beehives are, and you may have a local farmer's market where they sell it, but try and find it. All right, okay? Now we're going to taste our honey. And of course, that's the sweet taste, okay? So there's another question for you. Once you find your local honey, do you think that's going to taste the same as honey in Scotland? Or do you think it's going to be the same colour? Well, no, it's not, is it? Because what do bees land on to make the honey? They land on different flowers, don't they? So in Scotland, they've got a lot of heather, a lot of like pungent flowered, like things like lavender and heather. Okay, and obviously where you live, they've got different plants there as well. Okay, so that you're going to get different tastes. You're going to get different colours. All right, so it's not going to be because the bees have got different accents. All right, or they wear different clothes. Okay, it's basically because they land on the different flowers and they produce different kinds of honey. All right, okay, so let's just go over some bits and pieces. So we've got our tastes. We've got the sweet, which we tasted the honey. We've got bitter, which was the radish. Salty, which we tasted was the samphire or sea asparagus. Okay, well done guys if you've never tasted those before. Okay, sour, which was the lemon, and the umami, of course, was the tomato on the vine. Okay, then we had the senses. We've got the taste, the sight, the touch, the smell, the hearing, which we used all with the bread to start off with. Then we've got the food groups. We've got the carbohydrates, fruit and vegetables, fats and oils, the protein and the dairy, and then of course water. All right, and then obviously you've got your homework. I want you to find where your local beehives are. All right, okay, and where you can get your local honey. That's not to say you're going to be following bees home. All right, you can Google this, and I'm sure in the next session you'll be able to tell me the answer. I hope you've enjoyed the session, okay, and I'll see you next time. Cool.